Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise to offer my common sense amendment that redirects $2 million of the Inspector General to combat waste, fraud, and abuse within the EPA. As a proud member of the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability, I am a firm believer in increasing transparency of federal programs and actions within the executive branch. Honest, hardworking Americans should be able to trust that their tax dollars are being spent responsibly and for their intended purposes. The EPA Office of Inspector General is charged with providing critical oversight over tens of billions of dollars that are spent by the EPA, U.S. Chemical Safety and Hazard Investigation Board, as well as more than $100 billion that is being doled out through the so-called Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the so-called Inflation Reduction Act that we all know did nothing to reduce inflation. Ask anyone you meet in a grocery store. Unlike other Inspector General offices, the EPA IG did not receive additional funding from the Inflation Reduction Act, Expansion Act, to carry out the additional oversight mandates associated with this law. Oversight by the IG is critical to ensure that the EPA, as well as its grantees and contractors, are responsible stewards of scarce American tax dollars. The IG also seeks to root out fraud, waste, and abuse, mismanagement, and misconduct within the agencies it provides oversight to. Recently, the IG identified significant taxpayer risks and vulnerabilities that are associated with the administration's Clean School Bus program. Sounds great, right? The Inspector General pointed out, and I quote, "There is a high potential for, among other things, falsely substituting or duplicating requests from multiple federal agencies for the same or very similar materials and associated labor," end quote. Ever since the passage of the Inspector General Act in 1978, Inspectors General has uncovered billions of dollars of fraud and exposed numerous instances of criminal wrongdoing. The EPA IG is no exception. During the first half of the fiscal year of 2023, the EPA IG identified $135 million in wasted spending, fraud avoidance, and other monetary benefits to American taxpayers. However, vigilance by the EPA Inspector General is needed now more than ever for the more than $100 billion of Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act and the Inflation Reduction Act that have been distributed and are still going out the door. Funding currently allocated in this bill for the EPA IG is significantly below the budget estimate, yet they are being asked to do significantly more. My common sense amendment will help ensure that the Inspector General has the funding and resources they need to provide strict oversight of the EPA. I have found a pay for, so this is not deficit spending. We are not wasting taxpayer dollars. We are redirecting these $2 million, and I urge my colleagues to support my amendment to redirect important resources to the Inspector General. Madam Chair, without a reserve.
A gentleman from Colorado reserves. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Minnesota seek recognition?
Madam Chair, I claim time in opposition to this amendment.
The gentlewoman from Minnesota is recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Chair, to be clear, I fully support the oversight efforts and believe in the mission of the Inspector General's office across this government. It's vital. When I was former chair of this committee, I supported their work. I supported their work as the former chair of the Defense Subcommittee and as ranking member. But I have to strongly disagree with the offset and the treatment of the EPA in this bill in general. In base bill, the EPA is cut by nearly 20%. Almost every single account is cut except for the Office of the Inspector General. So quite frankly, the Inspector General's office does pretty well under this bill being protected. Cutting every single program at the EPA and seeking to increase funding for only one office which happens to be the Oversight Office, is clearly an attempt by the majority to politicize the Inspector General, and that to me is just unacceptable, Madam Chair. So I oppose the amendment, and before I reserve the balance of my time, I require how much time is left, if I could ask that of you.
The gentlewoman has 4 minutes remaining.
And the gentlewoman offering the amendment?
Gentlewoman from Colorado has 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman from Minnesota reserves. The gentlewoman from Colorado is recognized.
Yes, Madam Chair, I would like to yield the remainder of my time to my colleague, Mr. Simpson.
The gentleman from Idaho is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you for yielding. I rise in support of this amendment to provide additional funding for the EPA Office of Inspector General to conduct important and necessary oversight agencies. I've spoken with several of the Inspector Generals that have said that with all of the funding that went out last year, funding that went out to the EPA and to other things, they don't have enough money to do the oversight to make sure that the money that was spent in the Inflation Reduction Act, the infrastructure bill, and other things are properly spent. And so that they've asked us, actually, and several of my colleagues on this side of the aisle, Mrs. Boebert and Mrs. Bice, have also suggested that we need more money in the Inspector General's accounts. So I'm supporting this amendment, and I hope my colleagues will also.
Say that again. The gentlewoman from Colorado yield back.
I yield.
The gentlewoman from Minnesota is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I appreciate Chairman Simpson's remarks, but I would like to correct a point that was made earlier in the debate. The bill already does include a provision to provide the IG, with a percentage of funds from the IRA. And it's on page 216 is section 471. So the gentlewoman might want to double check before making such a broad statement again that it didn't include any funding that could be used from the IRA. So I still oppose the amendment, and with that, I yield back.